I don't drink a lot, but when I do, I drink only whiskey. And I just found out recently that you can invest in whiskey. And that's what today's video is all going to be about. And if you are new, welcome to my channel. My videos are all about investments that anyone in the world can make, not just Americans. Now, the major reason whiskey is an investable asset is because it actually gets better and better over time. So it isn't a depreciating asset. And it's actually quite a simple investment. And there's three different ways you can invest in whiskey. So the first way to invest in whiskey is just to buy a bottle and store it yourself. And the second option is to buy an entire barrel of whiskey, which you can pay somebody to store for you, and you get a better price per litre for the whiskey. And the third way to invest in whiskey is to trade it like a commodity, where you're buying and selling, but you never actually receive the whiskey. It's kind of like how people trade gold. And here are the positives about investing in whiskey. Firstly, it's a long-term historical asset, which has been performing since 1938 to 2008 at around about 6% ROI. And from 2008 to 2019, it's actually been growing at around about 7%, and that's factoring in all the costs and inflation. Whiskey is a lot less sensitive to economic conditions as well. So if there's like a housing market crash in Europe, well, your whiskey investment is going to be totally fine. Whiskey is also a scarce resource because a 2014 Scotch whiskey is never going to be produced again, simply because it's never going to be 2014 again. And as more 2014 whiskey gets consumed over the years, well, there's less and less whiskey available in the marketplace that was made in 2014. As you can see, after 18 years, it really starts to become a scarce and therefore more valuable resource. Unlike wine, whiskey is far easier to store. It should last indefinitely if stored away from the sunlight and significant changes of temperature. So you can start your own collection without worrying about the deterioration of the quality. The longevity of the industry is also very impressive, and I'd feel very safe owning whiskey for at least 20 years and knowing that it's going to improve in value. And unlike gold, whiskey actually improves in quality over time. I mean, like, as it ages, it actually gets better and better tasting. Whereas gold, for example, it's exactly the same gold in 20 years' time. It hasn't improved. And in the worst case scenario, if you have a bottle or a barrel of whiskey, well, you can at least throw a party and drink it. Now, here are the negatives to owning whiskey. See, option one, where you have a bottle, and option two, where you buy a barrel, well, they're very illiquid assets. It isn't easy to sell that bottle or that cask of whiskey that you have. You'll actually have to go through an auction, which is expensive, and you might not get the price that you want. Buying a bottle or buying a barrel is actually going to have high entry and exit costs. There are actually lots of taxes involved when you're buying the asset, and there's a lot of fees involved when you're selling the asset. And also, having a barrel or trading it like a commodity is going to have high maintenance fees as well, a lot higher than something like the Vanguard or BlackRock index funds. And the entire investment is all about the price going up over time. There's actually no cash generated by that asset. And in this way, whiskey is a lot like gold because it doesn't produce cash for you. This is actually a big reason why I like to invest in businesses, because while you're owning that business, it's producing cash which you get to receive. And over time, that gets bigger and bigger, not just the share price moving up, but also the cash that the business is producing. You get to keep it too. So I think it's a big negative that whiskey won't provide you any yearly returns. And how well do you actually know whiskey? To invest in a bottle or a barrel, you're really going to have to understand the quality, the blends, and the brand. And in this way, it is actually very similar to wine, because the distillery where the whiskey is made, it's going to have lots of different styles of blends and different barrels they use, and you're really going to have to understand what is important with whiskey. And these little things, they're going to influence the value of your whiskey that you're buying. So if you are going to buy an expensive bottle of whiskey or invest in a barrel of whiskey, well, you're really going to have to get your head around what whiskey actually is. And you're going to have to do a lot of research. You probably should do a course in whiskey appreciation, and maybe you should even travel to the distilleries where it's made. But truthfully, that's not a bad excuse to have to go to Japan or Scotland. Now, instead of trying to actually pick the specific blend that you think is going to perform better than the other blends over time, there's actually a fund in Hong Kong called the Platinum Whiskey Investment Fund. But they want $250,000 as the minimum investment into this fund. Now, since it started in 2014, it has appreciated around about 15% per year. But look, this is not the investment for me. That's way too expensive. This is more for those high-flying banking executives who are trying to show off to their friends and to attractive girls that they go to expensive whiskey rooftop parties in Hong Kong. I can see them sitting there drinking their whiskey and talking about how bad poor people are. That's just not my scene. Now, historically, when you're comparing buying a bottle of whiskey or a barrel of whiskey to the index fund, well, the index fund does perform better over time. This is mostly because trying to choose the right whiskey that will perform best over time is actually really difficult to do. And Benjamin Graham, he would say, invest in what you know. So if you don't really know whiskey, well, maybe it's better to avoid it. Well, maybe you do really love whiskey. So let me tell you what is the best beginner step into the whiskey world. Well, in 2015, a platform called Whiskey Invest Direct was launched where you can invest in whiskey without having to do any of the management yourself. Plus, it provides a trading platform so you can sell your whiskey whenever you like. Now, the fees are still high compared to an index fund, but you've got to remember that you're buying an alternative asset here, and most alternative assets are going to have a lot more management involved because they're alternative. So there's just simply more work involved in a less popular investment platform than there is in, say, an index fund. And for me personally, I see whiskey as maybe a really good alternative diversification strategy to the rest of my portfolio. And I would never put more than, say, 2 or 3% of my portfolio into an asset like this. The platform has also only been around for 5 years, so I don't feel that comfortable giving my money to a platform that really doesn't have some sort of reputation developed yet in the industry or any sort of longevity at all. So let's say I do invest in whiskey and I sit back every month and I see my whiskey balance getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, there might not be nothing wrong with the actual whiskey that I have purchased, but something might actually go wrong with the platform and my whiskey investment might be in a lot of trouble, and it has nothing to do with the whiskey itself. So I would actually like to see the platform go through a financial crisis or two just to see how they perform and make sure they're going to hold up. But there's actually a really big positive to buying whiskey on this platform. See, you actually miss out on what's called VAT. So when you normally buy Scottish whiskey like the barrel or the bottle, you're going to have to pay VAT tax. But if you're trading it like a commodity, you don't actually have to do this VAT. The platform isn't as liquid as, say, the stock market, pardon the pun, but it does give you a really good option to sell your whiskey whenever you want, rather than a bottle or a barrel where you have to go to an auction. The platform also shows you how your whiskey is improving in value over time. So you can get a feel for how it is growing and growing and growing. And this is far better than buying a bottle or a barrel where you have no idea what it actually costs at any given moment. And to find out, you really have to get an expert to come in and grade your whiskey. And another cool thing is you can start off really small. You can actually buy just 1 liter as your minimum investment, rather than the $250,000 that you'd have to invest in the Hong Kong fund. And the platform, it's available for everybody in the world. And all you have to do is just sign up, answer some questions, and deposit money into your account. I did a lot of research into this topic, and this isn't my first glass of whiskey today either. So if you could please just like my video for me so I can grow and make more videos like this. And let's go have a look at the trading platform just as a quick demonstration of how to actually buy some whiskey. So I've just logged in, and this is what the account balance screen looks like. I'm now going to go to the live order board. And what we can see here is we can see lots of different whiskies here that are available to buy or sell. And the first thing that I notice is that this green and this sort of, orange color buy and sell buttons here, you can notice the spread between the two of them. So obviously to buy whiskey is going to be more expensive than it is to sell a whiskey, because that's just the little spread. So because obviously if you could buy whiskey and sell it immediately, like for a profit, people would just be doing that all day. So it doesn't really work like that. So this is where you can come in here and actually purchase a liter of whiskey right here. So let's now take a look at one of the whiskeys. So, okay, I'm going to just click on this one here, Inaugural. Okay, and it tells us a little bit about the distillery location, their capacity. That's interesting information. So if you wanted to do further research, it gives you a bit of a background here on where to start your research, which is cool. Now let's go back to 2011. And as you can see, the prices here for the 2011 whiskey is around about £8 or so per litre. 2012 is sort of 6 or 7 pounds per litre. 2015, more like 4 here. Some of them are 2 pounds per litre. There's even one here that's it's 2 as well. So as you can see, over time, the older the whiskey is more expensive at more like $8 pounds per litre, whereas the more recent whiskies, say in the last couple of years, well, they're all in around about the 2, 3, even £1 per litre range. So I think maybe a little trick here would be to try to look into one of the brands that has performed better than the other brands over, say, the 5 to 10 year period. And then because that value has increased faster, it might be a better investment. Now, as you can see, there's a whole world of whiskey just right here, and you could get really deep into the analysis of just what's here on this website. Oh, and lastly, which whiskey is the best to buy? This is really good information here. I actually highly recommend reading this information. It'll tell you a lot about what to look for. Okay, so my opinion on whiskey, it is just an okay investment. If you love whiskey and you love the idea of an alternative investment that isn't correlated to some of your other investments, maybe in the stock market or the real estate market, then this might be a really good solid option. But for me, although I understand that scarcity improves the value of whiskey over time, I really have no understanding of what actually makes whiskey valuable in the first place. Is it the manufacturing process? Is it the taste? Is it the age? Is it the location? Is it the brand? I have no idea. I would really need to get deep into the world of whiskey to understand. If you are really into this idea, my initial opinion would be to invest really small in the platform itself and just buy like a few liters of whiskey just to understand what the process is and understand what's actually happening. And Whiskey Invest Direct only deal with Scottish whiskey, so that's probably a good place to start. But if I was to get really into this, I would actually want to investigate Japanese barrel whiskey. See, Japanese whiskey is actually the fastest growing of the whiskey segments, and it is picking up recognition all over the world. In my terrible personal opinion, I think Japanese whiskey is maybe considered a little bit more sophisticated. But look, this is just my preliminary research. You should go on a whiskey tour or talk to some experts before you invest any money. But as investments go, whiskey isn't too bad. It does improve in value over time. I like that it's a young marketplace as well because I think there's going to be opportunity to get really good deals. But understanding the intricate details of the industry and each particular whiskey is going to be very time consuming. So I think even if you are looking for an alternative investment, I think you actually really do have to love whiskey. I'm happy to drink it, but I'm not passionate enough about whiskey and the production of whiskey and everything that goes along with making whiskey to really use this as an investment vehicle. So for now, I'll enjoy whiskey just as a consumer. But I do have a far more appreciation for the whiskey industry now, and it was really interesting to learn a lot about it. I hope you enjoyed exploring the world of whiskey with me today, and maybe you'll become a whiskey investor. If you like alternative investments, please subscribe to my channel so you can get more ideas like this in the future. Also, leave a comment if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next video. Za zdrowie.